Arrabbiata, as many people know, means angry because of the heat of the chilies. However, this is an old world recipe, and what constituted spicy long ago is a far cry from what it means today. This dish has been ruined by many chefs, making it nothing more than red pepper flakes in tomato sauce. Arrabbiata dates back to the time when the Romans reached North Africa, and it originally contained garum, which is a spicy anchovy sauce that was as expensive as gold ounce for ounce. So while this recipe is not authentic compared to either the original Roman version or the current Italian interpretation, it is far more complex and deeper in flavor than you'll probably find anywhere else, and above all, it is certainly delicious.
Now we have the ingredients set up here. Normally I use dried red serrano chilies, ones that I dried myself for most cooking applications. This is one of the exceptions. When you buy the crushed red pepper flakes in a jar, it's usually not really cayenne. It's usually a mixture of chilies, believe it or not. So this is the real thing, and I'm going to grind it up in a food processor to use for this. I've got a couple of vine-ripened tomatoes and pasada. Why am I using both of these? Fully explained in volume 3 of my cookbook series. Way too complicated to get into here. Some garlic cloves. Now, you don't have to add anchovies to this. It's a common thing to add, but I'm using dried anchovies, which is a little bit more mellow in flavor. Again, in volume 3 of my cookbook, I'm going to offer you something even better than that. And a lot of Italians will scream that I'm putting onions in this dish, but this onion is going to be treated with the garlic in the same way that was done with the leek and garlic paste for the capellini recipe that I posted recently. So this isn't going to really taste like onion when you're done. This is going to be quite different. You'll be surprised. And of course a little bit of olive oil. Now I've given the red onion and the garlic just the coarsest of chops just to get it started for the food processor. And this is what you want to see. Still got relatively large pieces here. The garlic and the red onion are actually chemically reacting right now, enzymatically reacting. And I'm just going to leave this sit off to the side until we're ready for it. Now it's going to sit here for a good 15 minutes while we proceed. Now I took the stem off of that cayenne chili and tore it up to put in the spice mill. I'm adding a teaspoon of coarse salt. Okay, this is good. Now we're going to begin heating olive oil in the pan. Now, once the pan gets a little bit warm, I'm going to reduce the heat down to about 4 out of 1 to 10. And I'm going to add just enough olive oil to coat the bottom of the pan. Okay, maybe just a tiny bit more than that. And then we're going to add chilies and the salt to this and begin counting the time. This has to cook on a very low heat. Well, not very, very low, but fairly low heat. And while this is going on, cut the tomatoes up like this so that you've got a surface area you can rest against the bottom of the pan. Again, this is also explained in volume 3. And save the stem if they were vine ripened. We'll add this in for some extra flavor as well. And here's what these chilies look like after about 4 or 5 minutes. You can see it's getting darker. Heat's still on low. We're going to let it continue a little more. Okay, this has given us our background notes now. It's been about 8 minutes. Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. And I'm going to begin putting these tomatoes in. Now, when all tomatoes are in, I'm going to increase the heat just a little bit, up to about 5.5. And let it cook like this for a few minutes until the tomatoes begin to actually brown on the bottom. You can stir this a little bit. This is what it looks like after about 5 minutes. You need to keep a watch on the bottom here. We're looking for some actual caramelization of the tomato skin. It's not quite there yet, but it's almost there, and the tomatoes are softening nicely. Now it's been about 8 or 9 minutes since I added that tomato, and you can see that it's become fairly homogeneous. The aroma is more caramel. It's hard to explain the aroma, but after you do this once, you'll realize that the smell changes somewhere around this period, around 8 or 9 minutes. Now we have the onion and garlic that was ground up in the food processor and allowed to react all this time. So this is going to get scraped in. We're going to cook this together for a couple of minutes. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes now. Going to add in the pasada and the anchovy I just crushed lightly in a mortar. Of course, if you're using fresh anchovy, then you can just break it up with your fingers. Actually, if you're using fresh anchovy, it should have gone in with the onions and the garlic, but the dried anchovy should go in now. And then finally, we've got that little sprig of tomato vine. We'll throw that in too, and we'll let this simmer for a while. Now, after about 8 minutes of this being a simmer, I'm going to throw in a few basil opal leaves. You can use regular basil, of course. Just tear them coarsely and introduce them like this so they can infuse. It's not absolutely necessary you do this, but it adds a nice herbal feel to the background here. It's just got like 2 more minutes to go. And then finally, we hit the 10-minute mark. I'm removing this. I'm killing the heat here. I'm actually going to let it calm down, simmer down here just a little bit before I go to the next stage, just so that it's a little easier to handle. It's not quite so hot. There's no heat on the pan right now, though. Yeah, after I let it cool for just a couple minutes here, now I'm going to run it through a food mill with the coarse plate. This has got everything through except for large chunks of onion and garlic and other pieces we didn't want in there. Now we have our sauce that's actually ready for use. And when it's time that you actually want to make this, of course, you begin boiling the penne, or the portions that you're going to make of it. And on another burner, on a large non-stick skillet, melt a tablespoon of butter. Yeah, I know, the Italians are going to scream, you can't put butter in this. Well, you know what? I go with what tastes good, and also what pleases people. And I get compliments on this all the time from Italians because they don't know what's in it. Now, butter's melted. The pasta is very al dente. Package directions say 11 minutes. I've only cooked this for just under 9 minutes. So this is definitely not cooked enough. First, set that up here. We're going to toss it with the butter, get it all in. And now I'm increasing the heat. The butter melted on medium heat of 5. Now I increase the heat to about 7, medium high. And I'm frying the almost cooked pasta in the oil. This is actually a Chinese cooking method, and it's basically unknown in Italy, but we're not following tradition here anyway. When did I ever say this was a traditional method of making this? It isn't. It's going to be delicious though. We want to, what would be translated in Chinese as burn some flavor onto the noodles. You don't want to go too far though, of course. You don't want to actually burn them. It's just an expression. But you do want to dry them out a little bit and get some of that roasted butter flavor in there. Okay, after 2 or 3 minutes of this, give it a good blast. Flavor, it's all flavor. Now we're going to go with our ARRABBIATA. About a third of it for this amount of pasta. This mixed in. and then a little bit more of the pasta water. Got a ladle full of that. And we're going to cook this down until it's almost dry again. That'll finish cooking the pasta, and it'll make sure that the sauce is incorporated well with the pasta. And then we just add the cheese and some freshly minced parsley on top. When the pasta has absorbed all of the sauce, like this, it's mostly dried out, it's ready. However, I'm going to add, it's like a little tablespoon or so more of the ARRABBIATA, just to kind of kick it up a little bit, bring in some of the fresher flavors. The advantage you have of making the sauce ahead of time. You've got it in a separate bowl, so you can portion it out at different times as the pasta's cooking. Okay, this is ready to plate up now.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.